Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Yeah, welcome back to this Bhakti Vaibhav session. We are seeing Canto 1, Chapter 15, the Pandavas retire timely. And we saw the first 4 sections of this chapter. There are totally 5. So we covered the first 31 verses. Okay. So just to recap, the first 4 verses is where Arjuna starts responding to Maharaj Yudhishthira's inquiries which were made in the previous chapter. Okay. And he does that with lots of dejection and heavy heart because he knew or is aware that the Lord has left this world. Then from 5 to 17, Arjuna recounts or recalls his major accomplishments, not only his but also of the Pandavas, and all the instances in their lives where they have faced danger and the Lord has saved them and has protected them. Okay, so he recounts all his accomplishments as well as the instances from his life, from the Pandavas' life. Then he thinks about the intimacy that he has with the Supreme Lord. That's the first 2 verses, 18th and 19th of the 3rd section. And then he tells Maharaj Yudhishthira that the Lord has left and the Yadu dynasty also, they have also left. Then Arjuna is, at this point, he's overwhelmed with separation from the Lord. So then he recounts the instructions that the Lord gave to him in Bhagavad Gita. So that is explained from 24 to 27 verses is where Arjuna is contemplating these instructions. And from 27th or 28th, from 28th onwards is Suta Goswami who is speaking about the state of Arjuna, that after he contemplated on the instructions, then he attains the transcendental position. Okay, he's beyond lamentation now. He's beyond the material concept. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada explained in his purports that Arjuna was never in a material conception, but it looked as if he was. Okay. But just by remembering the instructions, then he was able to overcome an apparent an apparent lamentation like this. So in the last class, we were discussing the purport of text 31, and I mentioned that this last paragraph of this purport, where this washing off the contamination is being explained, this is connected to different verses which we are going to see today. Okay, and Prabhupada makes several references, not exactly to this purport, but to the importance of clearing the contamination from our consciousness. Okay, so this I said that we will just look over it. We will go through this last paragraph of this purport and then we'll start with the next text in this class. Okay. So this text is 31. Okay, I'll just read the translation. Because of his possessing spiritual assets, this Suta Goswami speaking to Shaunaka Rishi and others. Because of his possessing spiritual assets, the doubts of duality were completely cut off. Thus he was freed from the 3 modes of material nature and placed in transcendence. There was no longer any chance of his becoming entangled in birth and death, for he was freed from material form. Okay, and in the purport, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the doubts of duality, and we discussed the Advaya Jnana, the non-dual knowledge, and about the potency and the potent, and a little bit about the philosophy of Achintya Bheda. Then, the last paragraph of this purport, washing off the contamination. So Srila Prabhupada makes some important points here. He says that Lord Chaitanya says that simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can at once wash off the dust on the mirror of pure consciousness, and as soon as the dust is removed, one is at once freed from all material conditions. To become free from material conditions means to liberate the soul. Practical realization of the living being is made possible due to his becoming free from the reaction of the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. By the grace of the Lord, a pure devotee is at once raised to the plane of the Absolute, and there is no chance of the devotees becoming materially entangled again in conditioned life. One is not able to feel the presence of the Lord in all circumstances until one is endowed with the required transcendental vision, which is made possible by devotional service prescribed in the revealed scriptures. Okay. So to feel the presence of the Lord, we will see in subsequent passages that even Maharaj Yudhishthira, he also contemplated on transcendental knowledge. Okay. Actually, it's mentioned that he contemplated on the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Okay. And thus he was also able to place himself in his original transcendental position, and this is the position of Vishoka, or the stage of being freed from all grief and anxieties. So if we see in the context of this chapter, Arjuna is overwhelmed with grief. Okay. And before that, when Yudhishthira Maharaj saw the different inauspicious omens, okay, then obviously he also had an idea because of Narad Muni prompting him or telling him that the Lord is about to depart. Okay, his pastimes or his mission is complete and he is about to depart. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is already, he's even though he's contemplating, even though he's still doubtful, but still he's kind of aware that the Lord has disappeared. So he has grief and he has anxieties also. Okay, and his anxieties was proven right when Arjuna comes and tells Maharaj Yudhishthira that the Lord has left along with the Yadu dynasty. Okay. So this position of Vishoka, or without lamentation, Shoka means lamentation, Vishoka means without lamentation. So this stage is now attained by Arjuna, and the same stage will be attained by Maharaj Yudhishthira also, and that will be discussed in the subsequent text. Okay. So I just made a note here. Okay. So the last passage of this purport is connected to the realization of Maharaj Yudhishthira, which follows in the next few texts. Because he understood the nature of the Lord and his appearance and disappearance, so that's discussed in the 32nd verse, that one should retire from family life, that's discussed in 37 and 39, to get free from contamination. And freedom from material contamination is again discussed in the 40th text. Okay, and only when one becomes free from these material conditions, then only he can liberate himself. Okay, so that also we will see. So text 32. Upon hearing of Lord Krishna's returning to his abode and upon understanding the end of the Yadu dynasty's earthly manifestation, Maharaj Yudhishthira decided to go back home, back to Godhead. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada explains. So like previous session, we will be reading majorly from Srila Prabhupada's purports because there are several important points that we have to cover. And we will discuss few of them because many of them are quite straightforward, so we will be able to understand if we read this. We will discuss some of them also. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes, Maharaj Yudhishthira also turned his attention to the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita after hearing about the Lord's departure from the vision of earthly people. He began to deliberate on the Lord's way of appearance and departure. Okay. So, and Prabhupada makes this point, whenever the Lord likes, he can appear anywhere and everywhere without disturbing his appearance and disappearance in any other place. He is like the sun. The sun appears and disappears of its own accord at any place without disturbing its presence in other places. So this is basically explaining the Lord's appearance and disappearance and the mystery behind his appearance and disappearance. Okay, Krishna says, right, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti. So Arjuna. So one who knows his janma and karma, okay, his acts of appearance, disappearance and his activities, then he becomes liberated, okay, and he does not have to take birth again. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is contemplating or is thinking or he's turned his attention, it says he began to deliberate on the Lord's way of appearance and departure. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains how, the mystery behind his appearance and disappearance. And he says that the Lord is not forced to appear or disappear by any superior energy as the living beings appear and disappear, being forced by the law of nature. So this is one point, that Krishna never appears because he is being forced to appear, or he does not disappear because someone forces him to disappear. Normally people think that because a hunter shot an arrow at Krishna, therefore he left his body. Okay, so no, nobody is forcing him. Okay, it's not possible. So he is not forced to appear or disappear. Whenever the Lord likes, he can appear anywhere and everywhere without disturbing his appearance and disappearance in any other place. So this is the second point, where he says that not only he is not forced to appear or disappear, but actually he can appear anywhere and everywhere, even though he is present somewhere else. He might be present somewhere else, but he can also appear himself or make himself present at any other place. Okay, so both is possible. And both is not possible for the living entities. Okay, the living entity is always forced to take up a body and give this body based on the course of the eternal time. And he cannot make himself appear and disappear even though he is there in some other place. Okay, both these things are possible only for the Supreme Lord. Okay, so this is the knowledge, the transcendental knowledge that one should be aware of. This is the mystery behind his Janma. Okay, and Prabhupada gives his example of sun. And he says the sun appears and disappears of its own accord at any place without disturbing its presence in other places. So, even though we might move from one place to another place, but we'll always see the sun is above us. Okay, so the sun is everywhere. And he can disappear and appear on its own accord. The sun appears in the morning in India without disappearing from the Western Hemisphere. The sun is present everywhere and anywhere all over the universe. But it so appears that in a particular place, the sun appears in the morning and also disappears at some fixed time in the evening. The time limitation even of the sun is of no concern. And so what to speak of the Supreme Lord, who is the creator and controller of the sun. Right? And Srila Prabhupada quotes from Bhagavad Gita, quoting this verse which we spoke about now. And he says, in the spiritual sky, the Lord and those who are eternally engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord are all eternally young, because there is no old age or disease, and therefore there is also no death. Okay, so this is for those who are liberated. So one who understands the Lord's appearance and disappearance, he does not have to take birth again, right? And he attains the transcendental position. So that transcendental position is where there is no old age or disease, and there is no death also. So it is concluded that simply by understanding the Lord's appearance and disappearance in truth, one can attain the perfectional stage of eternal life. Therefore, Maharaj Yudhishthira also began to consider going back to Godhead. Okay, so in this purport, basically, Srila Prabhupada explains the appearance and disappearance of the Lord. Okay, the 2 points and then the example of the sun. Okay, so these things are being discussed here. And one who understands this, that the Lord's appearance and disappearance are like this, then one can attain the perfectional stage of eternal life. Kunti, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of the Yadu dynasty and disappearance of Lord Krishna, engaged in the devotional service of the transcendental personality of Godhead with full attention, and thus gained release from the course of material existence. Okay. And this purport Prabhupada writes about the passport for going back to Godhead. And he says that devotional service is the passport, which guarantees one a passport for going back to Godhead after quitting this present material body. The beginning of devotional service to the Lord is the beginning of spiritualizing the present body, and thus an unalloyed devotee of the Lord loses all material contact in the present body. Okay, so the body is made of the modes of nature. Okay, it's a material body, but by rendering devotional service, then the present body itself is spiritualized, and by that spiritualization, then it loses all material contact. Okay, so this theme will be discussed in subsequent verses also in the purport where Srila Prabhupada will speak about this Jivan Mukta stage. Okay, so the same theme, basically removing of contamination, okay, spiritualizing the material body, and to become liberated. So these are the core concepts that are discussed in the next 18, 19, 20 verses. Okay, yeah, 18 verses. And this is prominent because this is the place where the Pandavas are going to leave this material world and are going to go to the spiritual world. Okay, so this purports or the purports are specific to that particular theme of how one should quit one's material body. Okay, what are activities one should do when he wants to go from this material world or when death is impending upon him. Okay, so that's why these purports are important, because for see, the consciousness at the time of death determines the next destination, the next life. Okay, so how one should prepare himself for departure is what is being explained in these verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, because the Pandavas are going to quit their body. So Srila Prabhupada takes this opportunity to explain how we should prepare our life and how we should understand that the way the Pandavas leave from this material world, we should also prepare ourselves like that and leave this material world. Okay. So the purports will basically present this core theme of how one should leave this body. 34. The Supreme Unborn, Lord Shri Krishna, caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. Right? So a thorn, you can take a thorn by using another thorn. Okay. So it's like that. Both are same to the controller, he says. So Srila Prabhupada explains this. And he gives this point. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur suggests that the rishis like Shaunaka and others who were hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Suta Goswami at Naimisharanya were not happy to hear about the Yadus dying in the madness of intoxication. Okay, so they did not, it was not comfortable to them that the Yadus, who are the strongest and who are the eternal associates of the Lord, it's so frivolous that they got intoxicated and then they beat each other with sticks and they died. Looks very vague, very odd. They did not like that. So to give them relief from this mental agony, Suta Goswami speaks next, this verse and the next verse. Okay. So to give them relief from this mental agony, Suta Goswami assured them that the Lord caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, by which they had taken away the burden of the world. So this speaking out a thorn with a thorn. So this reveals the plan of the Supreme Lord. It says, right, the Supreme Unborn Lord Shri Krishna, Krishna caused the members of the Yadu dynasty to relinquish their bodies, and thus he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn. So it is the Supreme Lord's wish, or its supreme will, because of which the Yadu people, they fought with each other and disappeared. So it's just like a Leela. It's a Leela. So one should not think that the Yadu people or Yadus were actually they were unprotected, or the Yadus, because of the curse by Narad Muni and other Brahmanas, they relinquished their bodies like this. But actual cause is that the Lord, it was Supreme Lord's will, because of which these pastimes unfolded and it happened. So Srila Prabhupada writes here that the Lord and his eternal associates appeared on earth to help the administrative demigods in eradicating the burden of the world. Okay, so this we discussed in the last class, that the demons and the demigods, they fight with each other, and the same fight was brought down to the level of Bhuloka. Because the demons who were killed in the Devasura Sangram, then they took bodies within the earthly planet. Okay. And then to defeat them or to remove, the earth then became burdened. And to remove that burden, the Lord appeared along with his associates and other demigods also. Okay. So this was for eradicating the burden of the world. He therefore called for some of the confidential demigods to appear in the Yadu family and serve him in his great mission. After the mission was fulfilled, the demigods, by the will of the Lord, relinquished their corporeal bodies by fighting amongst themselves in the badness of intoxication. The demigods are accustomed to drinking somarasa beverage, and therefore the drinking of wine and intoxication are not unknown to them. Okay. Sometimes they were put into trouble for indulging in intoxication, and then he gives the example of Nalapuera and Mantriva. Okay. So here, I'll just read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The Devatas, at the time of appearing with the Lord in their Amsha forms, entered into the eternal forms belonging to the Yadavas. Separating from those eternal forms by the power of yoga, when they went to Prabhasa, they were made to attain Swarga with the forms of Devatas after drinking the liquor by the Lord, who showed to the world that they had given up bodies by the power of Maya. This is according to the explanation in the 11th canto. Okay. So what it basically means is the Devatas, they appeared in their Amsha forms along with the eternal forms, the spiritual forms of the Yadavas. Okay. And whatever happened at Prabhasa Kshetra, when they fought, then before they fought, then they had already relinquished the spiritual bodies of the Yadavas. Okay. And it is the Devatas who fought amongst each other and they killed each other and they attained the position of Swarga. Okay. So this is what Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains. So even in case of the Pandavas, Pandavas are the eternal associates of the Lord, we say. But in Mahabharata also, and even in Bhagavatam, it's mentioned that Yudhishthira was born as an Amsha of Yamaraj. Okay, Bhima was born as an Amsha of Vayu, like this. So even though they are eternal associates of the Lord, the Amshas of the Devatas also entered them. Okay. And when in Mahabharata, it is said that they went to the Swarga, it's basically the Amshas of those, of Yamaraj, of Vayu, of Indra. That is what went to the Swarga. And there in Bhagavatam we will see that the eternal associates of the Lord, they went back to Godhead. Okay, so this is how we understand. This is the understanding that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives here. And regarding the speaking Thon, by another Thon, Srila Prabhupada explains, for the Supreme Lord, both the Asuras and the demigods are equal. But the demigods are obedient to the Lord, whereas the Asuras are not. One thorn which causes pinpricks on the leg of the Lord, which is the Asuras, is certainly disturbing to the Lord. And the other thorn which takes out the disturbing elements certainly gives service to the Lord. So this is the demigods. So both are living entities, but one of the living entity is obedient to the Lord, whereas the other one is not. Okay. So that way, see, even though both are same to the controller, means they are all living entities. So they are same. But one renders service and the other renders only disturbance. Okay. The Lord's mission is always to protect the Devatas and destroy the Asuras whenever there is such need in the world, and to do good to both of them. Okay. So by destroying the Asuras, he is doing good to them also. Okay. Text 35. The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. Okay. So the Lord's relinquishing his body is like a magician's jugglery. Yeah, so there are a couple of important points. So we'll just see this. The Lord is described as Amrita or deathless because he has no material body. That's fine. The magician shows by his tricks that he is cut to pieces, burned to ashes, or made unconscious by hypnotic influences. But all are false shows only. Factually, the magician himself is neither burnt to ashes nor cut to pieces, nor is he dead or unconscious at any stage of his magical demonstration. So similarly, even though it might look in the external vision that the Lord is leaving his body or his eternal associates are fighting with each other and leaving the body in an abominable way, but it is not applicable to them. Okay, it's just like a magician showing jugglery. Okay, so this is one point. And in the first line of this purport, Srila Prabhupada makes his point that the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead, is neither impersonal nor formless, but his body is non-different from him, and therefore he is known as the embodiment of eternity, knowledge and bliss. Okay. So normally in the Upanishadic language or in the Vedanta Sutras, in there it's mentioned that the Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth, is Sat, Chit and Ananda. Okay. And from an impersonalist point of view, Sat or eternality does not have a form. Okay. There is no form of eternality. You cannot have a form of eternality. And knowledge, is there a form of knowledge? No, it's kind of a concept. Okay. And bliss, is there a form of bliss? No. So because the Absolute Truth is defined as Sat, Chit and Ananda, and these three does not have a form, okay, according to their understanding, therefore they say that the Absolute Truth is formless. Because Absolute Truth is Sat, Chit and Ananda, and none of these have forms. Eternality does not have a form, knowledge does not have a form, and bliss also does not have a form. So according to them, it's all impersonal. Okay, so that's what they say. But the actual understanding is that he is known as the embodiment of eternity, knowledge and bliss, which is Sat, Chit, Ananda, Vigraha. Okay, so that's why this Brahma Samhita verse is very important. Ishvara Paramakrishna Sachidananda Vigraha. Anadirajar Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So it's Sat, Chit and Ananda, but it's Vigraha also. he has form also. Okay. Or rather, his body is not different from him. Okay. So he's Sat Chit Ananda, but he's a Vigraha. Okay. He has a form. So that is something which is to be understood. And he says that similarly the Lord has eternal forms of unknown variety, of which the fish incarnation, as was executed in the universe, is also one. Because there are innumerable universes, somewhere or other the fish incarnation must be manifesting his pastimes without cessation. In this verse, the particular word dhate, eternally accepted, and not the word didva, accepted for the occasion, is used. The idea is that the Lord does not create the fish incarnation, he eternally has such a form, and the appearance and disappearance of such an incarnation serves particular purposes. So in context to this line, eternity, knowledge and bliss, Sat, Chit and Ananda, even his form is always eternal. Okay. And all his forms are full of knowledge. And he is always full of bliss. Okay. So this is what Sat, Chit and Ananda means. And it does not mean that because he is appearing in one of the universe, he is not there in another universes. Okay. So if he has disappeared, now the Matsya incarnation is not happening in this universe. But it is going on somewhere in another universe. So the Lord moves from universe to universe in his same form, okay, in the Matsya incarnation or Kurma incarnation, like this. So the forms are eternally existing, even within this material realm. Not only in the spiritual realm, but even within this material realm, the forms are eternal, okay, because they are moving from one universe to another. So we have discussed, when we contemplate on the pastimes of the Lord, it is actually happening in one of the universes. So that makes it factual, that makes it real. Our contemplation also makes it real. Okay. Not the contemplation makes it real, but the contemplation itself becomes real because the Lord's pastimes are happening in one of the universes. Okay. But those who are less intelligent, they are unaware of the Lord's form. Because the Lord, he reserves the power of being hidden from the non-devotees by his mystic curtain. And in the Padma Purana it is said that those who are envious and always angry at the Lord are unfit to know the actual and eternal form of the Lord. So those who are envious of the Lord and who are always angry at Lord, they can never conceive that the Lord has an eternal form. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada specifically writes about the eternality of the Supreme Lord here for this reason, because this text speaks about relinquishing the body. The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Okay. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. So this verse, this text might introduce some misconceptions within the minds of people who are reading, who are not aware of the Lord's position. Okay. So to remove all those misconceptions, Srila Prabhupada makes this point that the Lord's form is eternal. And the concept of eternality is explained, that oneness is not impersonal, he is not without form, because Sat, Chit and Ananda does not mean without form, but he is Vigraha, he is the embodiment of the Sat, Chit and Ananda. He is described as Amrita or deathless because he has no material body. Okay. And just like a magician manifests different illusions, it might seem to you that the Lord is also leaving his body or relinquishing his body, but that's also an illusion. The Lord has an eternal form because his pastimes are going on throughout this material universe. But those who are less intelligent, they are not aware of the Lord's form because they are envious and angry of the Lord. Okay, and the Lord himself chooses to whom he should reveal these confidential aspects of his personality and to whom he should cover with his illusory potency. Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samavtaha mudho yamna vijanati loko mamajam avyayam. And those who are envious are angry, yes, we discussed that. So, these are the points that Srila Prabhupada covers in this purport. And he writes, although the Lord relinquished both his temporary manifestation as a thunderbolt, okay, this is with respect to when he went to the arena of Kamsa. Okay, arena of Kamsa, different people saw him in different ways. Okay, so which can basically be said that Krishna himself manifested different features, so that different living entities can perceive him in different features. Okay. So the Lord really, so here is, the wrestlers they saw Krishna and they saw it just like a thunderbolt. Okay. So it is said that he manifested the feature of thunderbolt to the wrestlers. Okay. Similarly, his glaring appearance before Shishupal, so he manifested that also. So there are different features which the Lord manifested, and different living entities or people who are present there, they are able to perceive those features. But those are temporary manifestations. Okay. Although the Lord relinquished, means he gave up both his temporary manifestation as a thunderbolt before the wrestlers appointed by Kamsa and his glaring appearance before Shishupal, like a magician, the Lord is eternally existent and is never vanquished in any circumstance. So this temporary manifestation might be there and it might be taken away, but the Lord is eternally existent. Such forms are temporarily shown to the Asuras only, and when such exhibitions are withdrawn, the Asuras think that the Lord is no more existent. Just as the foolish audience thinks the magician is to be burnt, or rather, just as the foolish audience thinks the magician to be burnt to ashes or cut to pieces. Therefore, the conclusion is that because the Lord's body is transcendental, not material, he is never to be killed or changed. So the Asuras, they see a particular manifestation of one of his features, which is temporarily manifested, and when that manifestation is removed, they think the Lord himself is gone. Okay. But it is not like that. The Lord has his eternal form. And this we can also connect with the previous explanation where it was mentioned that the Lord left his universal form, material universal form, and then he went in his own self-same eternal body to the spiritual world. Correct? So if those who are mesmerized with the universal form of the Lord, they think that the Lord has left his body and then he has moved to his next destination, influenced by time or by his activities like this. But it's not like that. The universal form itself is a temporary form. Okay, it's an illusory form of the Lord, it's an imaginary form of the Lord. So only the devotees can understand this. But those who are asuras, they cannot understand this. So they think when the temporary form is removed, then the Lord himself is vanquished. Text 36. When the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, left this earthly planet in his self-same form, from that very day, Kali, who had already partially appeared, became fully manifest to create inauspicious conditions for those who are endowed with a poor fund of knowledge. Okay. So when the Lord was there, Kali had already partially appeared, but when the Lord disappeared, then he manifested his, fully manifested. So Prabhupada makes this point that the influence of Kali can be enforced only upon those who are not fully developed in God consciousness. Okay. So we speak a lot about Kali, the inauspicious conditions that Kali creates, or the contamination of this material world. But all that affects, or all that has an influence on the living entity only when they are not developed, fully developed in Krishna consciousness, or they are fully engaged in devotional service. One can neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping oneself fully under the supreme care of the personality of Godhead. The age of Kali ensued just after the battle of Kurukshetra, but it could not exert its influence because of the presence of the Lord. Okay, I think this. So this is a good commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He makes this important point. In this verse, after showing his form, Swabimbam, to the eyes of the world, he again withdrew it and disappeared. So this is with respect to Krishna. So he showed his form and then he withdrew it and disappeared. Okay. So that does not mean the Lord left, but he just disappeared. He is not visible to the eyes anymore. The verse does not say he gave up a body. Krishna Sandarbha makes this point. From that moment onwards, Kali entered those with sleeping intelligence. Kali did not affect those who had discrimination or who can distinguish between matter and spirit. The thief steals wealth from a sleeping person but is afraid to steal from someone who is awake. Okay, so this is a good example of how Kali influences a person. A person who is sleeping, Kali will influence them, just like a thief will come and steal from a person who is sleeping. But one who is awake to his natural position as living entity, as part and parcel of Krishna, as his eternal servant, then to that person Kali will not come because he is awake. And from one who is awake, you cannot steal anything. Okay. So that's a good point. Text 37. Maharaj Yudhishthira was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence throughout the capital, state, and home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home, and he dressed accordingly. Okay. So he saw the characteristics, the influence of the age, and not only within the whole country. See, he saw it throughout the capital, throughout his whole kingdom, even in his own home, okay, and even among individuals. Okay. So he saw this manifestation of falsehood, of cheating, of violence amongst everybody, from the micro level to the macro level, okay, from individuals to the country level. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home, and he dressed accordingly. So Srila Prabhupada writes that we have already come to know that the influence of the age of Kali is meant for godless so-called civilized man. Those who are under the protection of the Lord have nothing to fear from this horrible age. Okay. So there are problems. There is falsehood, avarice, diplomacy, cheating, nepotism. You know what's nepotism? Okay. Nepotism means that you do things only for those who are close to you, or you want to favor someone and you want to disfavor somebody else. That's called nepotism. Just like it's just an example. Okay, if you go to a government office or somewhere, okay, and if you know somebody in the office, or if you're relative to an officer there, okay, then your work will be done in a rapid pace. But if you don't know anybody there, then it will drag. Okay, it will go on for a very long time. Or sometimes, in government, even from the job perspective in government also, if the father had a job, then his son gets a job. Okay, it does not matter whether the son is qualified or not. This happens in several offices in the government. Okay. In railways it happens. Okay. That if the father has served in the railways for some reasonable number of years and he leaves his body, he dies, then the son automatically gets the same job. Okay. It does not matter whether he has studied, he is qualified, not qualified, nothing like that. He just gets a job. So this is nepotism. Okay. Because the qualification of a person is not seen just because he is related or just because he is favorable to one particular person. He is given more benefits than one who is qualified. Okay. So this is called nepotism. Violence and all such things are already in vogue, and no one can imagine what is going to happen gradually with further increase of the influence of Kali till the day of annihilation. So many problems are there, but those who are under the protection of the Lord have nothing to fear from this horrible age. So the question might arise, why did Maharaj Yudhishthira retire then? Because the text specifically states that he wisely prepared himself to leave home because he saw so many things of Kali Yuga and he dressed accordingly. So why did he retire? Okay, so a couple of points are made here with Prabhupada. So he says there was no necessity of his being afraid of the age of Kali, but he preferred. That's preference. Maharaj preferred to retire from active household life and prepare himself to go back to Godhead. The Pandavas are eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore they are more interested in the company of the Lord. So one is his desire. He wanted to go. That's one thing. Another point is that he wanted to set an example for others. Okay. So this point we will see in the subsequent verses also, the purport. That as an ideal king, Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to retire just to set an example for others. As soon as there is some young fellow to look after the household affairs, one should at once retire from family life to uplift oneself to spiritual realization. One should not rot in the dark well of household life till one is dragged out by the will of Yamaraj. Modern politicians should take lessons from Maharaj Yudhishthira about voluntary retirement from active life and should make room for the younger generation. Also, retired old gentlemen should take lessons from him and leave home for spiritual realization before being forcefully dragged away to meet death. Okay. So this is why I said at the start of this class that what a person who is about to die or who has come to that stage of life where his death is near, some 15-20 years are left, then he should do. He should take some active steps, okay, so that he can advance himself spiritually and prepare himself for going back home, back to Godhead. For that purpose, there are certain things that should be done. And Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas are very good examples for that. So this is what is illuminated in the purports of Srila Prabhupada. So this we will see in this coming verse. Okay, so yeah, text 38. Thereafter, in the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned his grandson, who was trained and equally qualified as the emperor and master of all land bordered by the seas. Okay, so this specifically this point of trained and equally qualified is mentioned here. So Srila Prabhupada explains that concerning Maharaj Parikshit, the specific word Vinayinam is significant. Vinayinam is properly trained. Okay, here. Why was the king of Hastinapur, at least till the time of Maharaj Parikshit, accepted as the emperor of the world? The only reason is that the people of the world were happy because of the good administration of the emperor. Okay. So because people were happy, therefore they were ready to accept the emperorship or the subjugation of Maharaj Parikshit and Maharaj Yudhishthira also. Okay. The happiness of the citizens was due to ample production of natural produce like grains, fruits, milks, etc. And even they were free from all bodily miseries, anxieties of mind and disturbances caused by natural phenomena and other living beings. So there were no manifestation of the three aspects, Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmik and Adi Devik miseries. And all this, Srila Prabhupada gives this point that all this is because of the administration of Maharaj Parikshit or Maharaj Yudhishthira, who were properly trained. So Kshatriya, if he is properly trained, okay, then he can bring about peace, even from a mundane point of view, throughout the whole society, okay, throughout the whole civilization. That's possible. But he is not properly trained, then there will always be the manifestation of Kali. Okay, there will always be problems within the administration. Okay. Because everyone was happy in all respects, there was no resentment among the citizens. Although there were sometimes battles between the state kings for political reasons and supremacy. So Kshatriyas might fight for political reasons and supremacy, but there was no resentment among the citizens. People were also enlightened enough not to quarrel over trivialities. Trivialities means short matters or very frivolous matters. They will not quarrel. But the influence of the age of Kali gradually infiltrated the good qualities of both the kings and the citizens, and therefore a tense situation developed between the ruler and the ruled, which is manifested even now. Even now means what? This manifested completely now. Okay, people are completely messed up. But still, even in this age of disparity between the ruler and the ruled, there can be spiritual emolument and God consciousness. That is a special prerogative. So even though there are so many problems in the society, still there can be spiritual advancement and God consciousness. So that is possible, okay, in this age of Kali. This is a special prerogative, which basically hints at the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come and he has initiated this Sankirtan Yajna. So just by this Sankirtan Yajna, all spiritual emolument, spiritual advancement is definitely there. Even from materialistic point of view, there can be peace and harmony among the citizens. Okay, the Sankirtan Yajna is complete for both spiritual as well as material welfare. Text 39. Then he posted Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, grandson of Lord Krishna, at Mathura as the king of Shurasenas. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhishthira performed a Prajapatya sacrifice and placed in himself the fire for quitting household life. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada speaks about the final order of life or the life of sannyas or renunciation. So he says that Maharaj Yudhishthira, he accepted the renounced order of life after posting Vajra and Maharaj Parikshit as the king of Hastinapur and Mathura. Srila Prabhupada writes here that the scientific system of Varnashrama Dharma divides the human life into 4 divisions of occupation and 4 orders of life. Right. The 4 orders of life as Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasi are to be followed by all irrespective of the occupational division. Okay. So he makes his point that irrespective of which occupation, means which varna you belong to, one must accept the renounced order of life. Modern politicians do not wish to retire from active life, even if they are old enough. But Maharaj Yudhishthira voluntarily retired to prepare himself from next life. Everyone's life must be so arranged that the last stage of life, say at least the last 15 or to 20 years prior to death, can be absolutely devoted to the devotional service of the Lord to attain the highest perfection of life. Okay. So last 15 to 20 years should be absolutely devoted, means no other engagements. Then one can attain the highest perfection of life. It is really foolishness to engage oneself all the days of one's life in material enjoyment and fruitive activities, because as long as the mind remains absorbed in fruitive work for material enjoyment, there is no chance of getting out from conditioned life or material bondage. Okay, so this is the contamination that was being spoken about in the 31st verse and in the 37th verse also. That as long as the mind remains absorbed in fruitive work for material enjoyment, fruitive work, work which is done with an intention to enjoy the results of that work. Okay. So if we have that tendency, even a minute tendency or a very little tendency like that, there is no chance of getting out from conditioned life or material bondage. Therefore, no one should follow the suicidal policy of neglecting one's supreme task of attaining the highest perfection of life, namely going back home, back to Godhead. Okay. So one must accept, or one must retire from active life. Active life means where we have to some way or the other engage in materialistic activities, okay, in maintenance of this body, in maintenance of our family, relatives. So one has to go through those stages of life in this second ashram, Grihastha ashram at least, Grihastha ashram and Vanaprastha ashram. But one should give up, or one should retire from active life and dedicate from oneself, at least in the last 15 to 20 years, for the devotional service of the Lord to attain the highest perfection. This does not mean that we wait till we are old. Okay, that's not the message here, because nobody knows when he is going to die. Okay. So therefore, each and every moment is just like a last moment of one's life. So each and every moment should be lived such that it's the last moment of our life. And if it's the last moment of our life, what we should do is always engage in devotional service, always think about Krishna, always remember his pastimes, things like that. Engage in his service. The mind should not be absorbed in fruitive work for material enjoyment. Okay, so that is also important. It's not that we do this only after we attain a certain age. What should happen throughout? Because we do not know when we are going to leave. Maharaj Yudhishthira at once relinquished all his garments, belt and ornaments of the royal order and became completely disinterested and unattached to everything. To become purified of material contamination is the necessary qualification for becoming one of the associates of the Lord. It's required for liberation and also to become one of the associates of the Lord. No one can become an associate of the Lord or can go back to Godhead without such purification. The kashaya or saffron loincloth of the sannyasi indicates freedom from all attractive material garments, and thus he changed his dress accordingly. This is President Maharaj Yudhishthira. The so-called leaders of men in the modern age are attached by national consciousness, but they do not know that such false consciousness is also another designation of the materially conditioned soul. Okay, so one might think that he is being selfless. I'm not thinking about myself. Okay, I'm thinking only about the people of my country, like this. But that's also national consciousness, and we can understand. This is with respect to, let's say, Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, till the end of his life, okay, he was completely seeped into this national consciousness. Okay, and even though some of his close associates informed him that there's a chance that you might be killed, but still he went for his meeting. Srila Prabhupada explains that he still went for his peace meeting or prayer meeting, and there he was killed. Okay. And all that is because he was attached by this national consciousness. Okay. So this is not the way to live a life. Okay. People say he's Mahatma, but then Prabhupada gives the example of Mahatma. Mahatma is one who is a devotee of the Lord, okay, who has taken shelter of the internal potency of the Lord. Right? Mahatmanas Mahampartha Devim Prakriti Nashika. They are the Mahatmas, not those who are completely engaged in national consciousness. Okay, or for the sake of people, I'm relinquishing all my material benefits, so I have no material attachment. No. Your material attachment might not be grossly manifested, where you are doing things only for your body. But the material attachment is when you are trying to do something with respect to where the body is born. The body is born in India, so therefore you want to do something for the Indians. Okay. Or if you're born in America, or if you're born in Australia, and then you want to do something good for your nation, for your country, like this is also national consciousness. This is also mundane consciousness. Apparently, it might seem that one is completely selfless because he's not doing something for his body, but still, because he's engaged in relation to where he was born, where his body was born, therefore the whole thing is also materially contaminated. So one has to relinquish such designations before one can become eligible to go back to Godhead. So one might claim that he's selfless, but still he's not eligible, he's materially conditioned only. Foolish people adore such men who die in national consciousness, right? Mahatma Gandhi celebrated so much. But here is an example of Maharaj Yudhishthir, a king who prepared himself to leave this world without such national consciousness. And he was the emperor of the whole Jambudvip. Okay. Not only Bharatavarsha, not only a small India, but this Bharatavarsha is Bharat Khanda, the whole 9 Varshas along with all the 9 islands. Right? Bharata, yes, 9 Varshas. The whole thing is Jambudvip. So he was the emperor of whole Jambudvip, but he completely detached himself. Okay? He had no such natural consciousness. So he is a Mahatma, okay, and not somebody else. And yet he is remembered even today because he was a great pious king, almost on the same level with the personality of Godhead, Sri Rama. And because the people of the world were dominated by such pious kings, they were happy in all respects. And thus it was quite possible for such great emperors to rule the world. But those who are completely in national consciousness, there might be some people who are happy with him or happy with what the situation is, but other people definitely are not happy. Therefore, they are killed. We are all in the history, if we see, not only speaking about Mahatma Gandhi, in history, if we see, there are so many politicians, okay, and so many great leaders who have been assassinated, okay, because they have tried to do something good for the people, okay, but because they are not devotees of the Lord, therefore whatever good they have tried to do, it has pleased some section of the society, but the other section of society has been completely displeased, and for that they have been assassinated, they have been killed. There are so many instances. Kennedy is there, Indira Gandhi is there, Rajiv Gandhi is there. So many instances, so many people are there. Okay, because people are not happy. Okay, even though they are trying to do something good, apparently, still they could not make people happy. Amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, that the mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the 5 elements, and his body into death. Then, as pure self, he became free from the material conception of life. So, in the previous verse, we saw that he gave up everything external. Okay, he gave up his garments, he gave up his belt, ornaments, okay, and then he became completely disinterested and unattached to everything external to him. Okay. Here, now this is next step, where he is at the level of consciousness. So, what he did is all the sense organs into the mind, then mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the 5 elements, and his body into death. Okay, this does not mean that he died, but we'll see that how that comes. Okay, so read the purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, Maharaj Yudhishthira, like his brother Arjuna, began to concentrate within himself and gradually became freed from all material bondage. First, he concentrated all the actions of the senses and amalgamated them into the mind. Or in other words, he turned his mind toward the transcendental service of the Lord. Okay, so this is like retracting the senses from the sense objects. So there are no activities of the senses anymore. And he turned his mind towards the transcendental service of the Lord. Okay. he prayed that since all material activities are performed by the mind in terms of actions and reactions of the material senses, and since he was going back to Godhead, the mind would wind up its material activities and be turned towards the transcendental service to the Lord. Okay. So, contaminated consciousness is reflected through the mind. Okay. And when the mind is contaminated with material desires, then the senses are active to engage in sense gratificatory activities or materialistic activities. So that's why it said that the material activities are performed by the mind. Okay, this is the reason. The mind would wind up its material activities, okay, and be turned towards the transcendental service to the Lord because he was going back to Godhead. That was his desire. There was no longer a need for material activities. Actually, the activities of the mind cannot be stopped, for they are the reflection of the eternal soul. But the quality of the activities can be changed from matter to the transcendental service of the Lord. The material color of the mind is changed when one cleanses it of the contaminations of life breathing and thereby frees it from the contamination of repeated births and deaths and situates it in pure spiritual life. Okay, so this is the mechanical process. Just like by doing this Ashtanga Yoga, one purifies his consciousness. Because the life air, if the life air flows through the body, through, okay, how to explain this? If the life air flows properly, okay, if the life air flows properly, okay, if the body is in a straight line, okay, then the life air flows properly. So that way the mind is automatically controlled, okay, because the senses are not agitating anymore. Okay, this is the process of Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, we have this Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam. Okay, when we do these four, then Pratyahara, retracting senses from all sense objects, it happens. Okay, it's a mechanical process. So just by controlling the life air, when you do this pranayama or when you make your body straight by doing these different asanas, then automatically it helps to control the mind. Okay, so it's the process of Ashtanga Yoga. Okay. So that's why it said that the material color of the mind is changed when one cleanses it of the contaminations of the life breathing, which can be done if we engage our life for rendering devotional service. Okay, that's the easiest way. Or else we do the mechanical process of Ashtanga Yoga and then we control the mind. So the mind's color changes. And thereby frees it from the contamination of repeated birth and death and situates it in pure spiritual life. Very close this door. It's very loud. And all of these, the mind, the senses, okay, the movement of life air through the body is manifested by the temporary embodiment of the material body, which is the production of the mind at the time of death. The state of mind at the time of death determines the next level, next body. If the mind is purified with practice of transcendental loving service to the Lord and is constantly engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, there is no more chance of the mind's producing another material body after death. It will be freed from absorption and material contamination, and the pure soul will be able to return home back to Godhead. Okay, so now we'll again come back and read this translation. So sense organs are amalgamated or merged into the mind into life, life into breathing. Okay. His total existence into the embodiment of the five elements, because the body is made up of five elements. Okay. So it's basically retracted. What is happening here is it's the reversal of the creation process. It's the process of creation. So there is Sarga and Visarga, and ultimately, finally, we have got this material body. Okay. So till that point, it's a part of creation. Now, one has to get liberated from that. Means he has to retract it back. He has to reverse this whole process. So this is the process of reversal, where the senses are interacting with the sense objects. The senses are interacting with the sense objects. So that's the material activities. Okay. That is a material activity. So that's the ultimate conclusion. And one suffers in this material world because of his activities and the corresponding reactions. Okay. So one can say that the whole creation culminates in material activities. The material world is created so that the conditioned living entities can engage in material activities. Okay. And material activities basically means interaction of the senses and the sense objects. So we start from that and then reverse that process. So sense objects, the senses are retracted, are taken back from sense objects. Then the senses itself are amalgamated into the mind, because mind is the reason why the senses are engaged in sense objects. Okay. Then the mind, the mind can be controlled through this life air or through breathing. Okay. And then when the total existence, there is no more material activities, then they are merged or they are amalgamated into the embodiment of 5 elements, because the material nature is made up of 5 elements. Okay. And then his body into death. The body is made up of 5 elements and the body is already dead. Okay. Only because of the presence of the living entity or the soul, the body remains active or seems active. Okay. So then he amalgamated his body into death, which is its natural position. The body is dead, the 5 elements are dead, material nature is dead. Okay. But we perform lots of activities through this material body because the soul is active, like this. So mechanically, if you retract back all these things, then what happens is the body is also amalgamated into death, which basically means the body is not active with any of the material activities. Okay. That means the body is dead. He is situated in his pure self, because the self is not completely detached from the body, and because the body is already dead, therefore the body is amalgamated with death. That's what it means. Right? Okay. Thus, amalgamating the gross body of 5 elements into the 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged the modes into one nescience and then absorbed that nescience into the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. So, reversing the conditioning. So, we'll read Prabhupada's purport here. All that is manifested in the material world is the product of the Mahatattva, Avyakta, and things that are visible in our material vision are nothing but combinations and permutations of such variegated material products. But the living entity is different from such material products. It is due to the living entity's forgetfulness of his eternal nature as eternal servant of the Lord, and his false conception of being a so-called Lord of the material nature, these two principles causes, the two principal causes of the mind's being materially affected. So these are the two causes why the mind is materially affected. One is the living entity's forgetfulness of his eternal nature, his ignorance, okay, or his nescience, as given in this verse, okay, his nescience, and his false conception of being a so-called Lord of the material nature, okay, the tendency to be the controller or enjoyer. So these two, one is forgetfulness of his eternal nature, okay, that is one, and the tendency to lord it over the material nature, second one. So these 2 points or these 2 principles are the causes of the mind's being materially affected, and because of this is obliged to enter into the existence of false sense enjoyment, and with its concomitant generation of material energies. Thus the gross body of the 5 elements is produced, because if we want to lord over the material nature, okay, one is we have forgetfulness of our eternal nature and we want to lord it over material nature, then it's imperative that we get a body through which we can exploit the material nature, and that body is made up of those 5 elements. The gross body of 5 elements is produced. Maharaj Yudhishthira reversed the action and merged the 5 elements of the body into the 3 modes of material nature. Okay, because the 5 elements, the body is made up of the 5 elements, but the body itself is formed because of the 3 modes. Right, the body that one gets is because of the 3 modes. The ingredient are the 5 elements, but the way the body is formed is because of the 3 modes. Correct? We get animal body, that's also made up of 5 elements. Insect body, bird's body, human body, everything is made up of 5 elements. But there are distinctions, there are differences in the body because of the action of the modes of material nature. Okay. So he reversed the action, merged the 5 elements of the body into the 3 modes of material nature. The qualitative distinction of the body as being good, bad or mediocre is extinguished. So this qualitative distinction between the body, or that one has a good body, one has a bad body or a mediocre body, is also because of the modes. So this influence of the modes is also extinguished, and again the qualitative manifestations become merged into the material energy, and the three modes themselves, they became merged into the material energy, which is produced from a false sense of the pure living being, which is the nescience, the ignorance of his own spiritual nature. Okay. So the root cause is ignorance, and from ignorance, from avidya, from ignorance is where this whole creation takes place. Correct? Okay, anyway, we'll discuss that in the second and third cantos. We'll see in more detail. Okay, but Maharaj used to basically reverse this whole process and is taking it back to the original. When one is thus inclined to become an associate of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, in one of the innumerable planets of the spiritual sky, especially in Golok Vrindavan, one has to think always that he is different from the material energy and has nothing to do with it. And he has to realize himself as pure spirit, Brahman, qualitatively equal with the Supreme Brahman, Parameshwar. Okay. So when we say that Maharaj used to reverse this action, what he's basically, he's not doing something to his body. It's not that he's doing something. What it basically means is one has to always think that is different from the material energy, and he has nothing to do with it. So his external activities and his consciousness has completely changed, and that way he has reversed the whole attainment or the body that he has attained. It's completely reversed. See, we understand that Maharaj Yudhishthira has an eternal, he's a spiritual body. Okay, he's an eternal associate of God, he does not have a material body. Okay, but still, this whole process is mentioned here that Maharaj Yudhishthira did it because these verses are for setting an example of how one should get himself ready to go back to Godhead. Okay. So one has to think always that he is different from material energy, that he has nothing to do with it, and he has to realize himself as pure spirit, qualitatively equal with the Supreme Brahman, Parameshwar. And this is the stage of liberation. Okay, one gets liberated. This sense of freedom from material relations, as well as freedom from the material engagement of the gross and subtle encirclement, makes one free to act as the servitor of the Lord, even though one is in the material world. This stage is called the Jivan Mukta stage, or the liberated stage, even while remaining in the material world. Okay, because he has reversed this whole action of material creation. Now he is not influenced by the three modes of material nature anymore, and he has realized himself as pure spirit, qualitatively equal with the Supreme Brahman. Okay, therefore he is free to act as the servitor of the Lord. Okay. Now, if you think the other way, if he is not realized, okay, if he does not know his eternal position, okay, he has not realized himself as spirit, then it's difficult for him to act as the servitor of the Lord. Okay, that's why it said, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nashoti Kamchati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhakti Lapate Param. So one has to come to the stage of Brahma Bhuta platform, and then he can render devotional service steadily. Okay. So that time one is free to act as the servitor of the Lord, even though one is in the material world, because he is not influenced by the actions and reactions of this material world. Okay. This stage is called as Jivan Mukta stage, or liberated stage, even while remaining in the material world. That is the process of ending material existence. One must not only think that he is Brahman, but must act like Brahman. One who only thinks himself Brahman is an impersonalist, and one who acts like Brahman is the pure devotee. Okay, so very clear. It's very simple and very clear that till this point, if one comes to this point, he can get himself liberated. Okay, but there is a chance that he will go to the impersonalist path. But one must engage. One should make himself free to act as a servitor of the Lord, even though one is in the material world. Then he is called as Jivan Mukta, and that is the stage that is attained by the pure devotee. Okay. Text 43. After that, Maharaj Yudhishthira dressed himself with torn clothing, gave up eating all solid foods, voluntarily became dumb, and let his hair hang loose. All this combined to make him look like an urchin or madman with no occupation. He did not depend on his brothers for anything, and just like a deaf man, he heard nothing. because he is completely detached from everything that his body does. Okay, and he is situated in his pure self. So he looked like a madman. And there are examples. There are several examples in Bhagavatam also of Jada Bharat, of Rishabdev, like this. And in their this thing also we will see how they followed a similar process where they amalgamated, they merged all their external consciousness into their pure self, like this. So he did not speak anything. Okay, he voluntarily became dumb. He did not speak anything, and just like a deaf man, he heard nothing. This stage of complete independence from everything is also called the purified stage of fearlessness. Okay, because they are not fearful of anymore. Fearfulness is there because we are fearful that something might happen to this body, or something might happen related, or something might happen to someone who is related to this body. That only creates fear. If one is situated in his pure self and he understands that he is Brahman, he is eternal, he is full of knowledge, and he is blissful also, then no, there is no fearfulness for him. Right? There is no fearfulness for him because he has purified himself. He is situated in his transcendental position. Okay. So this is the stage of complete independence. Fearlessness. So fearlessness, we have all seen before also that fearlessness is possible only for pure devotees because they are engaged in their constitutional position. Okay, they are engaged in their natural position. Situated in Brahman. One who is situated in Brahman, he should not be fearful of anything. He then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he lived in that way wherever he went. Okay. We have discussed many times before that the system of Varnashrama Dharma, as it was strictly followed by the inhabitants of the world, specifically by those who inhabited the Aryavarta province of the world, emphasizes the importance of leaving all household connections at a certain stage of life. The training and education was so imparted. And thus a respectable person like Maharaj Yudhishthira had to leave all family connections for self-realization. No king or respectable gentleman would continue family life till the end because that was considered suicidal and against the interest of the perfection of human life. Because human life gives an opportunity to take oneself back home, back to Godhead. Okay. And if one does not engage himself accordingly, then it is suicide. Okay. Because he is going to get another body which might not be human body. It can be any body, and then he has to continue his existence within this material world, undergoing repeated death again and again. Okay. So it's basically voluntarily accepting death by accepting another material body. So one who voluntarily accepts death, or one who voluntarily commits, or he voluntarily kills himself, is called as suicidal. Correct? He is committing suicide. So one who voluntarily, without preparing himself to attain perfection of human life, he is basically preparing himself for another material body within this material world. And material body will always die. The material body is always dead, but then the person who has embodied in the material body, he has to undergo the process of death. Okay, so that way it is suicide. Okay, even though it might not seem suicide, but anyone who has taken this material body has basically accepted the suicidal policy of death. And if he continues in that same journey again and again throughout his whole life, within this life, next life, and then continues his journey in the material world, he is basically committing suicide. Okay, so that's what it means. So this was considered suicidal and against the interest of the perfection of human life. So in order to be free from all family encumbrances and devote oneself 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, this system was always recommended for everyone because it is the path of authority. So if one, it's not impossible to be devoted within the family life itself, okay, till the last stage of life. But because the conditioning is so strong, there will always be some material attachment. within the family life. So therefore, it is strictly recommended that one follow this path of authority and leave, force himself. Okay. The inclination might be there, but the circumstances might not be conducive. So one should force himself to go away from family life so that he can attain the perfection. So the Lord instructs in Bhagavad Gita that one must become a devotee of the Lord at least at the last stage of one's life. Text 45. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected by irreligious practice. Therefore, they decided to follow in the footsteps of their elder brother. So they also saw the same things which Maharaj Yudhishthira saw, and they also decided to follow in the footsteps of Yudhishthira. Okay. Actually, Prabhupada makes this point that they had sufficiently been trained to know the ultimate goal of life. So not only the king, but even his brothers, the Pandavas, all the Pandavas are trained sufficiently, properly. According to the principles of Sanatana Dharma, one must retire from family life after half the duration of life is finished and must engage himself in self-realization. Okay. So after 50 years of life, one should go to forest. That's the injunction. Badam Brajet, one must go. That's it. But the question of engaging oneself is not always decided. Sometimes retired men are bewildered about how to engage themselves for the last days of life. Here is a decision by authorities like the Pandavas. Okay. So those who are retired from active life, what they do is get up in the morning, have tea, coffee, read newspaper. People do things like that because they do not know how to engage themselves, that they are going to leave this body soon. So they are completely engaged, they are bewildered. Okay, how they are supposed to engage themselves. But here is the decision by authorities like the Pandavas that they should go to the forest and render devotional service. All of them engaged themselves in favorably culturing the devotional service of the Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this point, according to Srila Swami, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha are not the ultimate goal of life. They are more or less practiced by persons who have no information of the ultimate goal of life. And it's, I think in the next purport, Sri Prabhupada writes that these are 4 principles of contamination. Even though they are called Purusharthas, but actually they are contaminating to the living entity. They all had performed all the principles of religion and as a result rightly decided that the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore, they meditated upon his feet without interruption. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, only those who have done pious deeds in previous lives and have become freed from the results of all impious acts can concentrate upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Yesham Prantakatam Papam. So the Pandavas, not only in this life but also in their previous life, had always performed the supreme pious work. So they are ever free from all reactions of impious work. Okay. So according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the principles of Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha are accepted by persons who are not free from the results of impious action. Okay, so this is revolutionary because normally we say that people engage in Dharma because they are pious. Right? People engage or they follow these 4 Purusharthas because that is pious. And by following the Varnashrama system, one can elevate himself to the heavenly planets. But our Acharyas, they say that these principles are accepted by those who are not free from the results of impious actions. Okay, because these 4 principles keep oneself within this material world. Such persons affected with the contamination of the above 4 principles cannot at once accept the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual sky. The material sky is under the management of Durga Devi or the material energy of the Lord, but the Vaikuntha world is managed by the personal energy of the Lord. So they cannot take up that because they are completely mesmerized by these 4 principles, the 4 Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Okay, and devotional service is the 5th Panchama Purushartha. Because these 4, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, keeps one within this material world. Okay, this is not the constitutional position of the living entity. So therefore it is also a result of impious action. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, the Pandavas performed everything such as Dharma and Artha as it should be done. And understanding that these duties were endless, for them, they concentrate on the lotus feet of Krishna with their minds. Okay, because these things will keep oneself, one in the material realm. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attain the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. Okay. So it's possible only on those who meditate upon the Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of Lord Shri Krishna, known as Golok Vrindavan, cannot be attained by person who are absorbed in the material conception of life. Okay. So both what should be done and what should not be done is both mentioned here. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. Okay. The very self-same bodies they attained to the spiritual world. So what should one do? He should meditate upon the Supreme Lord without deviation. What one should not do is absorb himself in the material conception of life. So with respect to attaining the spiritual world in the same body, Srila Prabhupada explains, he quotes from Jiva Goswami, a person freed from three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Okay. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahmana, even without change of body, or in going back to Godhead without change of body. So here he quotes this, how by proper initiation one can become a twice born Brahmana, even though he has been born in a lower than Shudra family. Okay. So just like this example, Srila Prabhupada writes that just like even though the body might be considered as lower, okay, or papayun, or something which is in the mode of ignorance, that of Shudra or lower than that, but by proper process of initiation, one can become a twice born Brahmana. Correct? This is verse that comes in Hari Bhakti Vilas. So similarly, okay, even though we or people can have material bodies, by the process of spiritual enlightenment, the whole body itself becomes completely spiritualized, and one can go to the spiritual world in the same same body. So that is possible. So this is the conclusion that Srila Jiva Goswami gives. Okay. When the Brahman perfection is still more advanced by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet Golok Vrindavan without change of body, as we have already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. So just like the Lord went to his abode without the change of body because his body is completely spiritual, similarly a pure devotee's body is also completely spiritual, and he can go to the spiritual world in the same body. Okay. This might be a bit difficult to understand, but we accept from our acharyas that pure devotees who have completely spiritualized their bodies, they do not have the inabilities or the disqualifications or the limitations of one who has a material body. Okay, so we should not try to judge their forms as, okay, this material body is made up of blood, this, that and all. So how is it that they are going to the spiritual world in the same spiritual body like this? It's difficult for us to understand because we are conditioned materially that way. Okay, we do not understand how the spiritual body of a pure devotee is like. But from authorities we can understand that they go to the spiritual world in their same body without going through the process of death. Okay. So they go to the spiritual world directly. Okay. They do not die, they do not change their bodies. And their body, being spiritual, do not have the limitations or the contaminations of those who are having material bodies. Okay. 49. Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhasa. Because he was absorbed in thought of Lord Krishna, he was received by the denizens of the Pitraloka planet, where he returned to his original post. So he is Yamaraj. Okay. And Prabhupada writes that Yamaraj, to the devotees, he is a cordial friend, but to the non-devotees, he is fear personified, because he awards punishment to the miscreants of the material world. And as an eternal servitor of the Lord, Vidura displayed his devotional activities very ardently and lived a life of a pious man. So much so that a materialistic man like Dhritarashtra also got salvation by his instruction. So by his pious activities in the devotional service of the Lord, he was able to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus he became washed of all contamination of a Shudra born life. Because he was cursed to be born as a Shudra. So it is understood that when he is cursed like this, then he should have, or he will have some contaminations of a Shudra person also. But because he was always concentrating on the lotus feet of the Lord, he became washed of all contamination of a Shudra born life. Okay. At the end, he was again received by the denizens of Pitraloka and posted in his original position. The demigods are also associates of the Lord without personal touch, whereas the direct associates of the Lord are in constant personal touch with him. The Lord and his personal associates incarnate in many universes without cessation. So this is the difference. The demigods are also associates of the Lord, but they do not have personal contact with the Lord. Whereas the direct associates of the Lord are in constant personal touch with him all the time. Okay. So these verses, the last one also, last one and the verse before that, I think, Srila Prabhupada makes this point of washing oneself from contamination. Okay. So these purports are important. If you read this, it's important because it shows the way of how one can wash all his contaminations from his materialistic life, basically. Okay. Text 50. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, were leaving home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husband. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about flying one's own plane. Okay. So when flying an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. Everyone has to take care of his own plane. And if there is any danger, no other plane can help another in that condition. Similarly, at the end of life, one has to go back home, back to Godhead. Everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. The help is, however, offered on the ground before flying in space. Okay. In one's life, help is offered. Okay, by the instructions of the spiritual master, by the mercy of the acharyas, like this. But at the end of the life, when death is upon us, then one has to fly his own plane. Okay. So that's the conclusion. So the Pandavas, Maharaj Yudhishthir, Pandavas, and even Draupadi and Subhadra, the wives of the Pandavas also, they are dependent on the Pandavas, but they did not care for them. Fly your own plane. You just left. Okay. Yeah, see, similarly, the spiritual master, the father, the mother, the relatives, the husband, and others can all render help during one's lifetime, teaching one how to cross the ocean of birth and death. But while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formerly received. Draupadi had 5 husbands, but none of them asked Draupadi to come with them. Okay, so Draupadi had to take care of herself without waiting for her great husbands. And because she was already trained, she at once took to concentration upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The wives also got the same result as their husbands. In the same manner, that is to say, without changing their bodies, they reached the destination of Godhead. So even the wives. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur suggests that both Draupadi and Subhadra, although her name is not mentioned herein, got the same result. Neither of them had to quit the body. Okay, text 51. The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life, back to Godhead, is fully auspicious and perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration about the personality of Godhead and the devotees of the Lord, like the Pandavas. The narration of the personality of Godhead and his devotees is absolute in itself, and thus to hear it with a devotional attitude is to associate with the Lord and constant companions with the Lord. Such constant companionship with the Lord by the process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam helps one attain the highest perfection of life, namely going back home, back to Godhead, without fail. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada is very merciful that if we just hear Srimad Bhagavatam, the highest perfection can be attained. Okay. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 15th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Pandavas Retire Timely. Okay. So today's verses from 32 onwards are important. Okay. So you have to read the purport with careful attention. Yeah, for the test as well as for practical implementation in our lives. It's very important. Very nice purports. All those details are explained. Okay. So, I have any questions? Everything is clear. Everything is simple. Yes. Yes.
In Mahabharata, it says they left the body.
In Mahabharata, it is mentioned that they left their bodies. Yes.
And,
Yeah, they fell down one by one. Correct.
One more incident that when Krishna left for Dwarka, so many members of Kuru dynasty, they were aggrieved, they were feeling separation. And there in Bhagavatam it is mentioned even this, Satyavati. Satyavati was also present there.
Yes.
In Mahabharata it is said that when Pandavas returned from the wood.
Yes. At that time, Satyavati and Ambika and Ambalika, they all left because Vyasdev comes and tells them that you should leave now. The fight is going to happen. Yeah, he says that. Correct. Okay. So, yeah, you will not be able to bear this family thing. Yeah. It is there. So normally the explanation that I have heard is that these instances they happened on different kalpas. The instances which are narrated in Mahabharata and in Bhagavatam, they are from different kalpas. So therefore there are differences. The instances which are narrated in Mahabharata and some things which are there in Bhagavatam. So that way there are differences. Yes. One way to understand see, when it's mentioned in Bhagavatam that Satyavati was there, it looks like Satyavati was there. Okay. So we cannot say Satyavati was not there. So Satyavati was definitely there. Okay. And with respect to the Pandavas, each Pandava, first Draupadi falls, they all go. Swargarohana Parva explains this, that they all go towards the heavenly planets. First Draupadi falls, then Nakula falls, Sahadev falls, then Nakula falls, then Arjuna falls. And for each of these things, then there is a specific fault which is mentioned of why they fell. So these instances are there. Okay. So it's there in Mahabharata. I have heard of, one thing is that being amshas of the devatas, okay, so this is there where the eternal associates of the Lord, they go to the spiritual world, the Pandavas that way, and the amshas, they go to the heavenly planets. So this might be understood in that way. Okay. I am not aware of this as a conclusive answer given by any acharyas. Okay, I have to explore. One thing that I have always heard from devotees is it's because of kalpa bheda. Okay, these happen in different kalpas. Okay, so this is what.
5,000 years before which one? Mahabharata?
They draw their own film.
5,000 years before, it's I don't know. It's Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam was
See, I don't think it's like this. Okay, it's my thinking, my thought process that Puranas are not. Okay, this is. I would like to present some evidence also for this. Okay, I think it's there in Tattva Sandarbha, where the intention is not to definitively follow a proper timeline and say this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. So Puranas are not like that. Okay. Puranas have their own specific theme or something which they want to present. Okay. So therefore some instances might be mixed to, just like this, this Varahadev's appearance. Maitreya Muni, he mixes two different appearances. Okay. This Shvetavaraha and Tattavaraha, they appear during different manvantaras. But then he considers them as one and then explains in the Bhagavatam. Okay, so that way, there might be some things like this. The theme is basically the pastimes of the Lord, his interaction with his devotees. Okay, the objective of Srimad Bhagavatam is not necessarily historical accuracy. Okay, historically accurate, yes, there to some extent, but Puranas, their feature itself is not that. Okay, their feature itself is that the proper theme or proper purpose for which they are available, it is being conveyed properly. So that way, there are instances. So there might be some instances in Bhagavatam which might be historically inaccurate. This is an example. This Maitreya Shishwara appearance like this, where he combines these two. But that does not make the Bhagavatam any less transcendental, or it does not make it this. It does not, or rather, it is Amala Purana only. Okay. It does not mean that because there might be something which seems inaccurate here, therefore it is contaminated. No, Bhagavatam is complete. It is completely pure. It's completely transcendental. Okay, and we follow the words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of our Acharyas, that Bhagavatam is completely perfect, completely pure, and that's it. Okay, so even when we speak about some of the instances where the Acharyas differs among their opinion, then also we just accept it and go forward, saying, okay, this is something which we cannot understand with our limited intelligence, with our limited understanding. So we accept, okay, this is what is given, we should accept it as it is. So similarly, Bhagavatam is like that. Whatever is given here, we accept it as it is. Okay. And from Mahabharata's point of view, all Shastra should be accepted based on how the Acharyas give us. So some of these things are explained. Not all, but some of these things are explained in Mahabharata. Some these things, contradictions have been resolved by Madhvacharya in his works. And some Acharyas have also resolved some things. I think we'll find this even in Prabhupada's teachings about this. But primarily what I've heard is this, that these happened in different kalpas. And Brahma himself, in his one day he undergoes, not his one day, but in his whole 1 year itself there are 360 kalpas. And so many pastimes. The Lord appears 360 times. And when the Acharyas are relating instances, there are chances that something might have got mixed. Okay. But because it's all related to the Lord and his devotees, therefore it is completely perfect. It is fully perfect to take us back home, back to Godhead. For our purposes, it is complete. Sure. Perfect. Okay. So historically, chronologically, it might seem that there are discrepancies, but then, okay, we can end with saying more research is required. Or we can try to find out some explanation from our Acharya's works. Yeah. So even though this is more Parikshit leaving his body, that itself is completely different in Mahabharata and in Bhagavatam.
They said something that Takshat became something insect.
Yeah, he became an insect, hid himself inside an apple. A Brahmana came and he created, Parikshit made a huge tower where not even air can enter inside. So many things are there, yes.
Mango.
But there are different, it might have happened in different kalpas. Okay. And see, as I told, the Puranas have their own theme, their own purpose. Similarly, Mahabharata also has its own purpose. Okay, Mahabharata purpose is Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, to encourage people to follow Dharma, and it's meant for the less intelligent class of people, as it's already given in Bhagavatam. Okay, so they might not be able to understand, or they might not be able to appreciate the narrations or the transcendental position of Bhagavatam or the instances which are mentioned in Bhagavatam. For them, it might be very difficult to understand. Okay, now we accept, because Prabhupada gave us all these things, we accept as it is that the Lord's position is like this, that Supreme Lord does not have a material body and all. But normally people whose minds are completely contaminated, who are completely in material consciousness, when they read the pastimes of the Lord, till it is told to them or till it is explained by a pure devotee that the Lord is transcendental, his pastimes are transcendental, he is beyond the three modes of mental nature and things like that, for a common man to understand the pastimes of the Lord is very difficult. Okay, it's almost impossible for them. So for those people, so that they can be situated in their pious lives of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, Mahabharata is given. So Mahabharata contains those instances which encourages them in those things. What's the joke? Okay. So they encourages, Mahabharata encourages them in those things. So those instances are included. Okay. From different kalpas maybe. Or maybe from one single kalpa only. I do not know. And Bhagavatam, it concentrates only primarily on the devotional aspect. The Supreme Lord, the position of the Supreme Lord, the absolute truth. And his devotees. So therefore, Bhagavatam is perfect. It's more important for our age than Mahabharata. Rather, it's the most important scripture. Even if we are not reading any other Puranas and other things. But Srimad Bhagavatam is complete in itself. It shows the light in the darkest age of Kali. So if you have light, then you can do everything. Why do you have to take another light if there's already some light available? If already sun is there, you don't need any other source of light. So when Bhagavatam is already there, we don't need any other source of scripture or any other scripture or any other things we don't need. When Mahabharata is not required that way. But just being grateful to Vyasadeva, he has given us all this. So we read Mahabharata from a devotional point of view, as through the vision that is given to us by Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So all the Shastra should be approached in that way, through the eyes or through the spectacles that Srila Prabhupada has fitted in our eyes. That's how we should see all the scriptures. So it's like that. Yeah. And not only Mahabharata and Bhagavatam, but there are other Puranas also which also narrate different pastimes with respect. The same pastimes are narrated in different ways. So this is specifically based on Kalpabheda. And I think in Tattva Sandarbha it's mentioned that different days of Brahma are differently influenced by a specific mode. Some of the days are influenced by mode of passion, some of the kalpas are influenced by mode of ignorance, some of the kalpas are influenced by mode of goodness. And based on that, the pastimes are different of the Lord. So when we say the days of the Brahma are influenced, or Kalpa, basically, day of Brahma is Kalpa. When the Kalpa is influenced by mode of passion, then the Lord's pastimes are enacted in a different way. And when the day is influenced by Tamoguna, then the Lord's pastimes are enacted in a different way. And those Puranas which are in Tamoguna, they become manifest during those days of Brahma. And they become more prominent. And those Puranas which are of passion or Sattva, they become more prominent. Or the glories of those Puranas become more prominent during those days of Brahma. But Srimad Bhagavatam, it always remains transcendental. Okay, amongst all the 18 Puranas, does not matter which day of Brahma it is, Bhagavatam is always complete, perfect, transcendental. So it's like Tattva Sandarbha, I think it's explained that. I think Jiva Goswami quotes from Matsya Purana, and then he specifically says this, that the days of Brahma are influenced differently. So pastimes of the Lord are also differently enacted. So that's why when we see contradiction between Puranas or Itihasas like that, normally it's explained as Kalpa Bheda, because the pastimes are enacted differently based on the mode which was more prominent during that day of Brahma. Okay. Yeah, any other questions? Fine. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki,
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Gaur Premanand.
Hari Bol.